The emergency beacon cut through the silence of Nexus Station like a knife. Commander Taman looked up from his morning reports as the alarm echoed through the Galactic Enforcement Division offices. Red lights flashed across every screen in the command center. "What do we have?" Taman asked his communications officer, Haywan. Haywan's fingers danced over her console. Her face grew pale as she read the incoming data. "Sir, we have a distress signal from the trade vessel Harmony's Edge. The ship is badly damaged and requesting immediate assistance." Taman stood up from his chair. In his 15 years with the Enforcement Division, he had seen plenty of distress calls. Most were mechanical failures or minor pirate raids. But something about this one felt different. The signal was weak and desperate. "Where is the ship now?" he asked. "Docking Bay 7. They just limped in on emergency power," Haywan replied. Taman grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Call Jiwoo and tell her to meet me at the docking bay. This might be serious." The walk to Docking Bay 7 took only 5 minutes, but Taman could smell the smoke before he saw the ship. The Harmony's Edge sat in the bay like a broken toy. Burn marks covered the hull. Several cargo doors hung open, twisted and melted. Whatever had happened to this ship was not an accident. Jiwoo was already waiting when Taman arrived. The tactical specialist stood with her arms crossed, studying the damaged vessel. Her expression was grim. "This is bad, Commander," she said. "Look at those weapon marks." This was a coordinated attack, Taman nodded. He had seen similar damage before. Pirates usually hit fast and took what they wanted, but this ship looked like it had been tortured. A medical team emerged from the ship's cargo hold. They carried a single survivor on a stretcher. Taman hurried over to speak with the head medic. "How many survivors?" he asked. The medic shook her head. "Just one, a human. The rest of the crew," she gestured helplessly at the ship. 23 beings dead. Murdered. Taman felt his stomach tighten. 23 crew members was a full trade vessel complement. Someone had wiped out an entire ship and left only one witness. "Can the survivor talk?" Jiwoo asked. "She's conscious but badly shaken. Says her name is Boram. She was the cargo specialist on board." They followed the medical team to the station's hospital wing. Boram sat on the edge of a bed wrapped in a thermal blanket. She was a small woman, probably in her 30s, with short black hair and tired eyes. Her clothes were stained and torn. Taman approached carefully. Survivors of pirate attacks were often traumatized and frightened. He needed information, but he also needed to be gentle. "Hello, Boram. I'm Commander Taman with the Enforcement Division. Can you tell us what happened to your ship?" Boram looked up at him. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Pirates. They came out of nowhere. The captain tried to surrender, but they didn't care. They killed everyone. Do you know which pirates?" Jiwoo asked, pulling out her datapad to take notes. They called themselves the Vextar Syndicate. Their leader was huge, with metal parts in his body. He had scales like a lizard and yellow eyes. Boram's hands shook as she spoke. His name was Grixtal. Taman and Jiwoo exchanged glances. The Vextar Syndicate was one of the most dangerous pirate groups in the galaxy. They had been terrorizing trade routes for years, but they never left survivors. This was the first time anyone had lived to identify them. "How did you survive?" Taman asked gently. Boram looked down at her hands. "I was in the waste processing unit when they attacked. The alarm went off and I hid. I stayed there for 3 days until I was sure they were gone." 3 days in waste processing? Jiwoo raised an eyebrow. "That must have been horrible." "It was better than being dead," Boram replied simply. Taman sat down in the chair next to the bed. "Boram, this is very important. Did you hear the pirates say anything about their next target?" Boram closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. "Yes, they were talking about a big score. A civilian transport ship called the New Eden Carrier. It's carrying families to the colony worlds. Over 400 people." Taman felt his blood run cold. The Vextar Syndicate had always focused on cargo ships and military vessels. If they were going after a civilian transport, hundreds of innocent families would die. "Did they say when?" Jiwoo asked urgently. "Soon, maybe a week. They seemed excited about it. Said it would be their biggest raid ever." Taman stood up. They had to act fast. The New Eden Carrier was probably already in space heading for the colony worlds. Finding it before the pirates did would be like searching for a grain of sand in an ocean. "Boram, I need you to remember everything you can about what the pirates said. Any detail might help us find them." Boram nodded. "I can try. But Commander, there's something else. When I was hiding, I heard them talking about me. They know someone survived." "What do you mean?" They found blood where I hid. They know someone was there. The leader, Grixtal, he was angry. He said loose ends needed to be tied up. A chill ran down Taemin's spine. If the Vextar Syndicate knew Boram had survived, they would come looking for her. Pirates like Grixtal didn't leave witnesses alive. Don't worry, he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. We'll protect you, and we'll stop them before they can hurt anyone else. But as Taemin left the hospital, he wondered if he was making promises he couldn't keep. The Vextar Syndicate had ships, weapons, and years of experience. All he had was one frightened survivor and a crew that had never faced pirates this dangerous. What he didn't know was that Grixtal had already traced the Harmony's edge to Nexus Station. The pirate warlord was studying station security, planning his next move. He had never left a witness alive, and he didn't plan to start now. The hunt had begun, but who was hunting whom remained to be seen. In the depths of space, the New Eden carrier continued its journey toward the colony worlds, unaware that death was following close behind. 400 families slept peacefully in their quarters, dreaming of new homes and fresh starts. They had no idea that their lives depended on a small human woman who had spent 3 days hiding in waste processing, and a commander who was about to learn what it meant to corner a Deathworlder. 3 days had passed since Boram arrived at Nexus Station. Taemin worked around the clock with his team to track down the Vextar Syndicate. They studied star charts and shipping routes. They contacted other enforcement divisions across the galaxy. But the pirates were good at hiding. Jiwoo finally found something useful on the 4th morning. She burst into Taemin's office holding a data pad with scanning results. "Commander, I think I found them," she said, breathing hard from running down the corridor. Taemin looked up from his reports. "Where?" "The Kethmore system. It's an old mining area that was abandoned 20 years ago. Our long-range sensors picked up energy signatures in the asteroid field." Taemin studied the data on Jiwoo's pad. The readings were faint but definitely showed multiple ships. "How sure are you?" 80%. The energy patterns match Vextar ship designs. And look at this. She pointed to another section of the data. They're using the asteroid minerals to hide their heat signatures. It's clever. Too clever for most pirates, Taemin agreed. He made his decision quickly. "Get our ship ready. We leave in 1 hour. What about Boram?" Jiwoo asked. Taemin had been thinking about that problem for days. Boram was safer on the station, but she was also the only witness who could identify the pirates. If something went wrong, they would need her testimony. "She comes with us, but she stays on the ship during any action." 1 hour later, the enforcement vessel Stellar Justice departed Nexus Station. Taemin had chosen his smallest crew for the mission. Besides himself, Jiwoo, and Haiwan, he brought only 2 other officers. This was supposed to be a reconnaissance mission. They would locate the pirates and then call for backup. Boram sat quietly in the passenger area during the journey. She had said very little since agreeing to come along. Taemin noticed she spent most of her time staring out the viewport at the stars. She seemed calm, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. The trip to Kethmore took 6 hours. As they approached the asteroid field, Haiwan ran passive scans to avoid detection. "I'm reading at least 5 ships," she reported. "They're spread throughout the field, probably using the asteroids as cover." "Any sign of the New Eden carrier?" Taemin asked. "Negative, but there are cargo containers floating near the largest ship. Could be from previous raids." Taemin made another decision. "We go in closer. I need to confirm these are our pirates before we call for backup." That decision saved the lives of the families on the New Eden carrier. It also nearly got them all killed. As the Stellar Justice moved deeper into the asteroid field, Haiwan's console lit up with new contacts. Ships were appearing all around them, dropping their stealth systems like hunters revealing themselves to cornered prey. "Commander," Haiwan shouted. "We're surrounded. 8 ships all armed." Before Taemin could order evasive action, his communication system activated. A huge reptilian face filled the main screen. Yellow eyes stared at them with cruel amusement. This had to be Grixtal. "Well, well," the pirate leader said in a voice like grinding stone. "The little enforcement mice have come to play with the cats." "This is Commander Taemin of the Galactic Enforcement Division," Taemin replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "You are under arrest for piracy and murder." Grixtal laughed, showing rows of sharp metal teeth. "I think you misunderstand the situation, Commander. You are surrounded and outgunned. Your weapons are no match for mine." As if to prove his point, energy beams lanced out from the pirate ships. They hit the Stellar Justice's engines with surgical precision, disabling them without destroying the ship. Taemin's vessel was now dead in space. Now then, Grixtal continued, I believe you have something that belongs to me. A little human who saw things she should not have seen. Taemin felt Boram tense behind him. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. Boram of the cargo ship Harmony's Edge. The one who hid like a rat while her crewmates died. I want her back. That's not going to happen. Grixtal's expression darkened. Then you will all die. But first you will watch as I make examples of your crew. Perhaps that will change your mind. The main screen went dark. Minutes later, Taemin heard the sound of docking clamps attaching to his ship. The pirates were coming aboard. The boarding action was swift and brutal. Taemin's small crew tried to resist, but they were overwhelmed by superior numbers. Within 10 minutes, they were all prisoners aboard Grixtal's massive flagship. The pirate ship was a floating fortress of metal and weapons. Ancient battle scars covered the walls. The air smelled of oil and blood. Taemin and his crew were dragged through corridors lined with the trophies of 100 raids. They were thrown into a large chamber that served as both meeting room and torture chamber. Grixtal waited for them there, surrounded by his senior officers. The pirate leader was even more intimidating in person. He stood 3 meters tall with cybernetic arms that could crush steel. Welcome to my ship, Grixtal said with mock politeness. I do hope you will be cooperative guests. He walked over to where Heywan knelt on the floor, her hands bound behind her back. The young communications officer tried not to show fear, but Taemin could see her trembling. You see, Commander, I have a reputation to maintain, Grixtal continued. I never leave witnesses. It's bad for business. People start to think they can identify me. He placed one massive clawed hand on Heywan's shoulder. So here is what will happen. I will hurt your crew members one by one until the human Boram agrees to come forward. Then I will kill all of you to make sure there are no loose ends. You don't need to hurt them, Taemin said quickly. I'm the commander. Take me instead. Grixtal laughed again. How noble. But I think I'll start with this pretty one. Fear makes people more cooperative. He began to squeeze Heywan's shoulder with his cybernetic hand. The young officer cried out in pain. Taemin struggled against his bonds, but the other pirates held him tight. That was when Boram spoke for the first time since they had been captured. Stop. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly across the chamber. Grixtal paused and looked at her with interest. Ah, there she is, the little rat who caused me so much trouble. Boram stood up slowly. The pirates who had been guarding her stepped back, confused. There was something different about her now. Something that made them nervous. Let them go, Boram said. Your problem is with me. Indeed it is. But I think a little suffering first will make the lesson more memorable. Or, Boram said, and now there was steel in her voice. We could settle this the old way, single combat. You and me. The chamber fell silent. Grixtal stared at the small human woman as if she had gone insane. You want to fight me? He asked, incredulous. You barely come up to my chest. I want to make you a deal, Boram replied calmly. If I win, you let my friends go free. If you win, you can kill us all however you want. Grixtal looked around at his crew. They were all watching with fascination. The idea of a tiny human challenging their mighty leader was too entertaining to pass up. Very well, little rat. But when I'm done with you, your friends will watch you die slowly. As the pirates prepared their combat arena, Taemin caught Boram's eye. He wanted to tell her not to do this, that there had to be another way. But something in her expression stopped him. For the first time since he had met her, Boram looked completely calm. That should have been his first warning. The combat arena was a circular pit in the center of Grixtal's flagship. Metal walls rose up on all sides, topped by viewing platforms where the pirate crew gathered to watch. Weapon racks lined the walls, filled with clubs, blades, and other instruments of death. This was clearly not the first time someone had fought for their life in this place. Boram stood in the center of the arena, looking impossibly small. She had removed her torn jacket and now wore only a simple shirt and pants. Her hands hung loosely at her sides. She showed no fear, but she also showed no confidence. To the watching pirates, she looked like prey waiting to be slaughtered. Grixtal entered the arena to the cheers of his crew. The massive pirate leader had also removed his armor, revealing cybernetic implants that covered half his torso. His artificial arms gleamed under the arena lights. Each hand ended in razor-sharp claws that could tear through metal. "Last chance, little human," Grixtal called out. "Surrender now and I'll make your death quick." Boram said nothing. She simply waited. Taemin watched from the viewing platform with growing horror. His hands were still bound and pirate guards stood on either side of him. Jiwoo and Haewon were nearby, both looking sick with worry. "She can't win this," Jiwoo whispered. "He's 3 times her size." "She knows that," Taemin whispered back. But he wondered what Boram was really thinking. Why had she agreed to this impossible fight? Grixtal raised his arms and roared. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. His crew roared back, hungry for blood and entertainment. Then the pirate leader charged. Boram moved at the last second, stepping aside as Grixtal crashed into the arena wall behind her. The impact left a dent in the metal. If she had been standing there, she would have been crushed instantly. Grixtal spun around, snarling. "Stand still and die like you're supposed to." He charged again, claws extended. This time Boram couldn't dodge completely. The razor claws caught her shoulder, tearing through cloth and skin. Blood flowed down her arm, but she didn't cry out. The pirates cheered as their leader drew first blood. Grixtal smiled, showing his metal teeth. "That's just the beginning, rat." For the next 10 minutes, the fight went exactly as everyone expected. Grixtal was bigger, stronger, and better armed. He landed blow after blow while Boram could barely avoid being killed outright. Soon she was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but something strange was happening. Every time Grixtal thought the fight was over, Boram got back up. Every time he prepared to deliver a killing blow, she found a way to survive just a little longer. The pirate crew began to mutter among themselves. This should have been finished by now. The human should be dead. Why was she still standing? Grixtal was getting frustrated. He had expected an easy victory, a quick demonstration of his power. Instead, he was being forced to work for his kill. Worse, the human didn't seem to be getting weaker. If anything, she seemed to be learning his attack patterns. "Why won't you just die?" he screamed, swinging his claws in a wild arc. Boram ducked under the attack and rolled away. For the first time since the fight began, she picked up a weapon from the arena floor. It was just a piece of broken metal, but she held it like she knew how to use it. "Because," she said quietly, "that's not what humans do." Grixtal paused, confused by her calm tone. In that moment of hesitation, Boram struck. The metal fragment found a gap in his cybernetic armor, sliding between 2 plates and into the wiring beneath. Sparks flew from Grixtal's left arm. The limb twitched and went partially limp. The pirate leader roared in pain and rage. "You little wretch! I'll tear you apart slowly for that." But now something had changed in the arena. The pirates in the viewing area had stopped cheering. They were watching with growing unease as their mighty leader struggled with a wounded human half his size. Grixtal attacked with renewed fury, but his damaged arm made him clumsy. Boram began to exploit every mistake, every moment when he overextended himself. She used the arena itself as a weapon, leading him into walls and obstacles. Taemin watched in amazement as the small cargo specialist began to fight back in earnest. This wasn't the frightened survivor he had met in the hospital. This was something else entirely. "How is she doing this?" Haewon whispered. "She's not trying to beat him," Jiwoo realized. "She's trying to outlast him." That was exactly what Boram was doing. While Grixtal exhausted himself with powerful attacks, she conserved her energy. While he fought with rage and frustration, she fought with cold calculation. She was turning the fight into something the pirate leader had never experienced before. An endurance contest. Grixtal came from a species that won through intimidation and overwhelming force. His cybernetic enhancements made him stronger and faster, but they also consumed enormous amounts of energy. As the fight dragged on, his attacks became slower and less coordinated. Boram, meanwhile, seemed to find strength in her wounds. Every time Grixtal hurt her, she became more focused, more determined. She began to anticipate his moves before he made them. The turning point came when Grixtal, frustrated beyond reason, made a critical error. He grabbed a heavy war club from the weapon rack and raised it over his head for a finishing blow. The movement left his entire torso exposed. Boram didn't hesitate. She dove forward with the broken metal still in her hand. This time she aimed for the main power coupling that connected his cybernetic arms to his spinal column. The metal fragment pierced the coupling with a shower of sparks. Grixtal's artificial arms went completely dead, and the war club fell from nerveless fingers. The arena fell silent except for the sound of electrical systems shorting out. Grixtel stared down at his useless arms in shock and disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. Boram stood before him, bleeding and exhausted but still on her feet. "You made one mistake," she said. "You thought I was prey." Grixtel tried to charge one more time, relying on his natural strength alone. But without his cybernetic enhancements, he was just a tired, aging pirate who had spent too many years relying on technology to do his fighting. Boram stepped aside and let him crash into the arena wall. This time he didn't get back up. The silence stretched on for long seconds. Then slowly, Boram turned to face the viewing platforms filled with stunned pirates, and she smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized it was no longer cornered. The pirates in the viewing area took an unconscious step back from the railings. Taymin felt a chill run down his spine. He was beginning to understand that he had never really known Boram at all. The quiet cargo specialist had been hiding something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. In the arena below, Boram picked up Grixtal's fallen war club and tested its weight. The weapon was almost as long as she was tall, but she handled it with surprising ease. "So," she called out to the watching pirates, "who's next?" The hunt was about to begin. But now the roles of predator and prey had been reversed. The pirates stared down at Boram in shocked silence. Their mighty leader lay unconscious in the arena, defeated by a human woman they had dismissed as harmless prey. The war club in her hands looked like a toy, but none of them wanted to test whether she knew how to use it. Boram walked slowly around the arena, studying the faces above her. She was no longer the frightened survivor who had hidden for 3 days in waste processing. Something fundamental had changed during the fight with Grixtel. "According to your rules," she called out, "I won. That means you let my friends go." The pirates looked at each other nervously. Without Grixtel to give orders, they seemed lost. Finally, the largest one stepped forward. This was Corv, the pirate second in command. Like his leader, he was heavily augmented with cybernetic implants. "The deal was with Grixtel," Corv snarled. "He's finished, so the deal is finished too." Boram nodded as if she had expected this answer. "I thought you might say that." She moved faster than anyone thought possible. The war club flew from her hands like a spear, punching through the viewing platform's metal railing and embedding itself in the wall just centimeters from Corv's head. The message was clear. She could have killed him if she had wanted to. "Here's a new deal," Boram said calmly. "Release my friends and surrender your ship, or find out what happens when you corner a human with nothing left to lose." Corv laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're one small human against 40 of us. What can you possibly do?" Boram's smile returned cold and predatory. "Let me show you." She pressed her hand against a section of the arena wall that looked identical to every other section. But Boram had been watching and learning during her fight. She had noticed things that the pirates had missed. A hidden panel slid open, revealing maintenance controls for the arena's systems. Boram's fingers moved over the controls with surprising skill. She had spent years as a cargo specialist, learning the inner workings of dozens of different ship designs. The arena's gravity generators began to fluctuate. Emergency lighting replaced the normal illumination. Somewhere in the distance, alarms started to sound. "She's in our systems," one of the pirates shouted. "Stop her!" Several pirates jumped down into the arena, brandishing weapons. But Boram was already moving. She didn't fight them the way other species fought, with honor and direct confrontation. She fought the way humans had always fought on their dangerous homeworld. She cheated. A handful of sand thrown from the arena floor blinded the first attacker. A kick to the knee dropped the second. The third found himself tangled in maintenance cables that Boram had pulled from the wall panel. By the time more pirates reached the arena floor, Boram was gone. She had vanished into the ship's maintenance systems like smoke. Taymin watched all this from the viewing platform with growing amazement. The pirates guarding him seemed more interested in the chaos below than in watching their prisoners. When Boram disappeared, they began to panic. "Find her," Corv screamed. "Search every corridor." That was when Jiwoo made her move. She had been working on her bonds during the fight, using a sharp edge on her belt buckle to slowly cut through the restraints. When the guards turned away, she broke free and struck. The first guard went down to a nerve strike that left him unconscious. The second guard spun around just in time to receive Jiwoo's elbow in his throat. He collapsed, gasping for air. "Haewon," Jiwoo called out. "Can you get loose?" Haewon had been watching Jiwoo's technique. She managed to free herself just as more pirates turned toward them. But Taemin was still bound, and there were too many enemies to fight. That was when the lights went out. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows throughout the ship as Bo-Ram continued her work in the maintenance areas. She moved through ducts and service tunnels that were too small for most of the pirate crew. Her knowledge of ship systems let her cause havoc from hiding. Life support systems began to malfunction. Artificial gravity flickered on and off. Communications equipment failed throughout the ship. The pirates found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see or predict. "She's just one human," Korv shouted into his damaged communicator. "How is she doing this?" But Bo-Ram wasn't fighting like one human anymore. She was fighting like what humans really were, pack hunters who used intelligence and cooperation to bring down much larger prey. The difference was that her pack consisted of the ship's own systems, turned against their masters. In the confusion, Taemin and his team managed to escape from the viewing platform. They fought their way through darkened corridors toward the ship's armory. Pirates stumbled through the darkness, no longer sure who was friend or enemy. "Where did she learn to do this?" Haywan asked as they moved. "I don't think she learned it," Taemin replied grimly. "I think she remembered it." They reached the armory to find that Bo-Ram had been there first. The weapon lockers stood open, but most of the advanced firearms were gone. Only basic tools remained: knives, clubs, and simple projectile weapons. Jiwoo picked up a knife and tested its balance. She took the energy weapons but left these. Why? Taemin was beginning to understand. Because energy weapons can be tracked and jammed. These can't. A scream echoed from somewhere deeper in the ship. Then another. The pirates were discovering what happened when they tried to hunt a human who didn't want to be found. Bo-Ram had turned their own ship into a maze of traps and ambushes. She used maintenance shafts to move unseen, striking at isolated pirates and then vanishing again. Each attack was swift and silent, designed to spread fear rather than simply kill. The psychological effect was devastating. The pirates had always been the predators, used to facing prey that ran or surrendered when cornered. They had no experience dealing with an enemy that became more dangerous when trapped. "She's in the walls," one pirate screamed over the failing communication system. "She's everywhere." Korv tried to rally his crew, but discipline was breaking down. Some pirates barricaded themselves in their quarters. Others ran through the corridors, firing randomly at shadows. A few tried to reach the escape pods, only to find them sabotaged. Meanwhile, Taemin and his team made their way toward the ship's bridge. They moved carefully through corridors filled with the sounds of chaos and fear. The mighty Vextar Syndicate was tearing itself apart trying to find one small human woman. "Commander," Haywan whispered. "What exactly is Bo-Ram?" Before Taemin could answer, a new voice spoke from the shadows ahead of them. "I'm exactly what every pirate in the galaxy should be afraid of," Bo-Ram said, stepping into view. She carried an armload of weapons taken from fallen pirates. Her clothes were torn and bloody, but her eyes were calm and focused. "I'm a human who's tired of running." She handed weapons to each of them, keeping the simplest tools for herself. "The bridge is just ahead. Korv and his remaining crew have barricaded themselves inside." "How many are left?" Jiwoo asked. "Maybe 12. They're scared and making mistakes." Bo-Ram's expression was coldly satisfied. They've never dealt with a pack hunter before. As if to emphasize her point, another scream echoed through the ship. Somewhere in the darkness, another pirate had discovered that humans from Earth were not like other prey species. "What's your plan?" Taemin asked. Bo-Ram looked toward the bridge with predatory focus. "Simple, we end this." But Taemin was beginning to realize that nothing about Bo-Ram was simple. The quiet cargo specialist had revealed herself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, she was hunting. The corridors of the Vextar flagship had become a nightmare maze. Emergency lighting cast twisted shadows on walls marked with blast burns and claw marks. The proud pirate vessel now felt like a tomb, filled with the sounds of fear and desperation. Korv huddled on the bridge with his remaining crew. 12 pirates who had once terrorized entire star systems now jumped at every sound. Their weapons were ready, but they had no idea what they were fighting. "Status report." Korv barked into his communicator. Static answered him. The human had destroyed most of their communication systems. They were blind and deaf in their own ship. "Sir," one of his officers said nervously, "maybe we should evacuate. Use the escape pods." She sabotaged them all. Another pirate replied. I checked. Every pod has been disabled. Corv slammed his fist against the command console. How had one small human turned his mighty ship into a trap? They should have killed her in the arena and been done with it. Outside the bridge, Boram moved through the ship like a ghost. She used service tunnels and ventilation shafts that the larger pirates couldn't fit through. Years of working in cargo holds had taught her to navigate tight spaces and understand ship layouts. But more than that, she understood something about warfare that the pirates had never learned. It wasn't about being the strongest or having the biggest weapons. It was about using your environment and making your enemies afraid. Every few minutes she would strike. A pirate standing guard would suddenly find himself alone in the dark. A group moving through a corridor would discover their path blocked by debris. Weapons would malfunction at critical moments. Lights would fail just as someone thought they were safe. The pirates began to crack under the psychological pressure. They had spent their lives as predators taking what they wanted from weaker beings. Now they were the prey, and they didn't know how to handle it. Where is she? One pirate screamed, firing wildly down an empty corridor. Show yourself, coward. But Boram didn't show herself. She didn't need to prove her courage with direct confrontation. She simply needed to win. Tai Min and his team watched this transformation with growing unease. They had followed Boram through the ship, but she insisted they stay back while she worked. What they saw disturbed them more than they cared to admit. She's not the same person we rescued, He-One whispered. Maybe she never was, Jiwoo replied grimly. They watched as Boram systematically hunted down the remaining pirates. She didn't kill them all, that would have been wasteful. Instead, she disabled them, leaving them alive but helpless. Each fallen enemy spread more fear among the survivors. The pirates began to understand that they were dealing with something beyond their experience. This wasn't random violence or simple revenge. This was calculated, methodical warfare conducted by someone who understood their weaknesses better than they did. Corv tried to rally his remaining crew. She's just one human. We can take her if we work together. But his words rang hollow. Half his crew was already gone, picked off one by an enemy they couldn't see coming. The others were too scared to leave the bridge. That was when Boram's voice came over the ship's communication system. She had somehow managed to repair one channel. Attention, pirates of the Vextar Syndicate. Her voice echoed through the corridors. It was calm and professional, like she was making a routine cargo announcement. You have two choices. Surrender now and spend your lives in galactic prison, or continue fighting and discover what happens when you threaten a human's pack. On the bridge, the pirates looked at each other with growing terror. Her pack? What was she talking about? Corv grabbed the communication controls. You're alone, human. You have no pack. You're wrong, Boram's voice replied. Every being you murdered on the Harmony's Edge was my pack. Every family you've killed in your raids was someone's pack. And every innocent person on that colony transport you're planning to attack, they're all my pack now. The pirates fell silent. They were beginning to understand that they weren't just fighting one angry human. They were fighting someone who saw herself as the guardian of every innocent life they had taken or threatened. I'm giving you 1 minute to surrender, Boram continued. After that, I stopped being polite. Corv laughed, but it sounded desperate even to his own ears. What can you possibly do to us? We have the bridge locked down. The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, the pirates heard something that chilled them to their core. Footsteps in the ventilation system above their heads. Boram had found another way in. She's in the air ducts, someone screamed. They opened fire at the ceiling, energy beams scorching metal and filling the air with smoke. But when the emergency lighting came back on, the bridge looked empty except for them. Did we get her? One pirate asked hopefully. That was when they noticed that their weapons had stopped working. While they had been shooting at shadows, Boram had somehow sabotaged their energy systems. She dropped down from a hidden panel behind the command station, moving with deadly silence. The first pirate didn't even see her coming. A nerve strike dropped him unconscious to the floor. The others spun around, but their weapons were useless pieces of metal now. Boram held a simple knife in one hand and a piece of broken electronics in the other. I told you, she said quietly. I stopped being polite. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of what 3 billion years of evolution on a death world could produce when cornered and angry. Boram moved through the remaining pirates like they were standing still. She used every dirty trick, Every underhanded technique, every survival instinct that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. When the galactic community saw humans as weak and harmless, they forgot that Earth was the most dangerous planet in known space. Every species on Earth had to be a killer just to survive. Humans had risen to the top of that food chain by being the most efficient killers of all. In less than 2 minutes, every pirate on the bridge was unconscious or disabled. Only Corv remained standing, backing against the main view screen with terror in his eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. Boram looked at him with cold eyes. "I'm what happens when you corner a Deathworlder." She moved toward him, and Corv did something that proved he was smarter than his dead leader. He dropped his weapon and raised his hands in surrender. "Please," he begged. "I surrender. I'll tell you everything about our operations." Boram studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded and stepped back. "Good choice," she said, "because the alternative was going to be very unpleasant for you." Taemin and his team finally entered the bridge, staring at the scene of destruction. A single human woman had just conquered an entire pirate flagship, using nothing but intelligence, determination, and the kind of vicious creativity that only came from a species that had clawed its way to the top of nature's food chain. "Is it over?" Haywan asked. Boram looked around at the defeated pirates and nodded. "It's over. The Vextar Syndicate is finished." But as she said those words, Taemin realized that something else was just beginning. Word of this incident would spread throughout the galaxy. Every criminal organization would hear about what happened when they cornered a human with nothing to lose. The universe was about to learn a very important lesson about the species from the death world called Earth. Some prey, when cornered, revealed itself to be the apex predator it had always been. The bridge of the Vextar flagship fell silent except for the groans of defeated pirates. Boram stood in the center of the destruction, breathing heavily but victorious. Her simple knife dripped with the blood of those who had underestimated what a cornered human could do. Taemin approached carefully, still not entirely sure who Boram really was. The quiet cargo specialist he had met on Nexus Station was gone. In her place stood someone who had just dismantled an entire pirate organization with her bare hands. "Boram," he said softly. "It's over. You can stop now." She turned to look at him, and for a moment he saw something frightening in her eyes. The calm predator who had hunted through the ship's corridors was still there, calculating and dangerous. Then, slowly, her expression softened. The human woman he remembered began to return. "Yes," she said quietly. "It's over." Corv, the surviving pirate leader, cowered against the view screen. His once proud crew lay unconscious around him, victims of a single human's methodical assault. "Please," he begged. "I told you I surrender. I'll give you everything. All our bases, our contacts, our planned raids." Boram walked over to him slowly. Corv flinched as she approached, expecting violence. Instead, she knelt down so they were at eye level. "Tell me about the New Eden carrier," she said calmly. "The colony transport? We were going to hit it in 3 days. 400 families heading to the Kepler system." Corv's words tumbled out in his eagerness to cooperate. "But we can call it off. I have codes to contact the attack ships." "Do it," Boram ordered. "Now." Corv scrambled to the communication console with shaking hands. He transmitted the abort codes for the planned attack on the civilian transport. Within minutes, confirmation came back that the raiding fleet had received the orders and was returning to base. 400 families would reach their new home safely, never knowing how close they had come to death. Jiwoo was working at another console, downloading the ship's computer files. "Commander, we've got everything. Complete records of Vextar operations going back 5 years. Base locations, weapon caches, financial networks. This will shut down the entire organization." Haywan looked up from her own station. "I'm reading multiple distress signals from other Vextar ships in the system. Looks like word spread about what happened here. Their crews are abandoning ship and requesting rescue." The news didn't surprise Taemin. Pirates were brave when they had overwhelming advantages, but they had no stomach for fair fights. Seeing their mighty flagship conquered by a single human would shatter their morale completely. "What about Grixtel?" he asked. Boram glanced toward the medical bay where the former pirate leader was being treated. "He'll live. His cybernetic systems were damaged but not destroyed. He'll stand trial for his crimes. And the rest of them? Prison, all of them." Boram's voice was firm. "They chose to live by violence. Now they'll face justice for it." Taemin nodded, but he was troubled by something he couldn't quite name. The woman standing before him had just accomplished something that entire fleet actions had failed to do. She had ended the Vextar Syndicate in a single day. But the methods she had used— "Boram," he said carefully, "what you did today was incredible, but it was also terrifying. I've never seen anything like it." She looked at him with tired eyes. "I hope you never have to see it again. I hope no human ever has to do what I did today. But you could do it again, couldn't you? If you had to?" Boram was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her words sent chills down Taemin's spine. "Commander, humans spent millions of years learning to hunt and kill on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. We're very good at it when we need to be. The only reason the rest of the galaxy is safe is because we choose to be civilized." She gestured toward the defeated pirates around them. "But when someone threatens our pack, when they corner us with no way out, we remember what we really are." "And what is that?" "The apex predators of a death world. And apex predators don't lose." 6 hours later, the enforcement fleet arrived at Kethmore System. Taemin had called for backup as soon as they secured the pirate flagship. Now 3 enforcement vessels surrounded the asteroid field, rounding up the scattered remnants of the Vextar Syndicate. Admiral Songho, the enforcement division commander, met them aboard the captured flagship. He was a veteran officer who had spent decades fighting pirates and criminals, but even he seemed shaken by what he found. "One human did all this?" he asked, looking at the unconscious pirates being loaded onto transport ships. "One cornered human," Taemin corrected. "There's a difference." Admiral Songho studied Boram, who was giving her statement to the investigation team. She looked like any other civilian survivor, tired, wounded, and ready to go home. "She doesn't look dangerous," the Admiral observed. "That's what makes her dangerous," Taemin replied. "No one sees it coming." The investigation took another day to complete. When it was over, the Vextar Syndicate had been completely destroyed. Their ships were captured, their bases identified, their financial networks seized. Years of terror across the galaxy had ended in a single brutal lesson about the species from Earth. Boram gave her final statement to the enforcement investigators. She answered every question calmly and thoroughly, providing details that would ensure convictions for every surviving pirate. When it was over, Admiral Songho approached her personally. "Ms. Boram," he said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Enforcement Division, I want to thank you. Your actions have saved countless lives." "I just did what needed to be done," she replied simply. "Still, the galaxy owes you a debt. If there's anything we can do for you—" Boram looked out at the stars through the flagship's view screen. "There is one thing. I want to go back to work. I want to return to being a cargo specialist on trade ships." Admiral Songho looked surprised. "After everything that's happened? You could have any position you wanted. Command rank, special operations, anything." "I don't want to command anyone," Boram said firmly. "I don't want to hurt anyone else unless I have to. I just want to move cargo and live peacefully. But what if this happens again? What if other pirates threaten innocent people?" Boram's expression grew cold for just a moment, and Admiral Songho caught a glimpse of the predator that had destroyed the Vextar Syndicate. "Then they'll learn the same lesson these pirates learned. You don't corner a Deathworlder unless you want to find out why Earth is the most dangerous planet in known space." 3 weeks later, Boram returned to her job as a cargo specialist. She worked quietly and efficiently just as she had before, but word of what she had done spread throughout the galaxy's shipping networks. Pirates who had once seen human crew members as easy targets now gave those ships a wide berth. The story grew in the telling, but the core message remained clear. Humans were not the harmless primitives many had believed them to be. Criminal organizations across the galaxy began to reconsider their tactics. The phrase "cornering a Deathworlder" entered common usage as a warning about actions that seemed safe but carried terrible consequences. Some threats were better left alone. Some prey, when cornered, revealed itself to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And in the cargo holds of peaceful trading ships, humans went about their quiet work with small smiles on their faces. They knew something the galaxy was just beginning to learn. Earth had produced the ultimate predators, and those predators had chosen to be civilized, but choice could always be revoked. The universe had learned an important lesson about the species from the death world called Earth. No one cornered a human twice.